Hello, everyone. I want to first apologize for the late episode this week. Life has gotten in the way, as it sometimes does, but we seem to be back on track and moving forward. This week, we have a wonderful conversation with teacher Molly Dugan. Molly strives to share a relationship with her students that is built on respect for one another. Molly has also found a great following on social media, with one of her humorous posts achieving over 17 million views. Wow. This is a great episode, one that every teacher should definitely see. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind everyone to please like and share the show. It really helps us out in the long run. Okay, let's get started.
Auto sequence start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Molly Dugan, and happiness is growing where you are planted.
All right, Molly Dugan, thank you so much for being on today, affectionately known also as Miss Dugan on social media.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are teaching now in Kansas, is that right? You're a teacher in
I'm
Kansas?
in Kansas. That's
Okay.
Yes, the Kansas City area.
Kansas City. Are you high school now, or are you still middle school?
Oh yeah, high school. I know. It's pretty funny that all this has kind of happened based on my middle school stories, and it all happened right after I had accepted this high school position. So I'm going to get to compare notes with middle to high school.
That's all. Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how the kids are different for sure. So all that just kind of started in middle school, the whole social media blow up? Is that?
So it started in May. So it was like maybe 2 weeks before the school year was over. I had never posted on like TikTok before. And on Instagram, I had like a teacher Instagram, but I don't even think I had logged into it for like a year. I've actually never been good at social media. And I kind of seen the trend going around, and I was like, oh my God, I'm sure every teacher has thought I have a lot of things I could say of what kids have said to me. So I just thought, I have 2 weeks left in middle school. Let's make one for all the middle school quotes that I've gotten. And it blew up. It just overnight. And so, I just thought, as long as people watch, I guess I'll keep posting. Yeah.
I mean, have you noticed that do you get a mix of different audience size, like teachers? Is it everybody, parents, teachers, kids?
I don't really know.
Yeah.
I don't really know who my audience is. Like I do and I don't,
It's hard to tell. Yeah.
It's kind of hard to tell because I don't think a lot of kids see it. I think my students last year saw it because they were so excited. They were like, oh, I said that. And they were all tuning in. I don't know that I'm necessarily on like student TikToks. I don't think that their algorithm, they want to see their teachers on their algorithm.
Right.
It's a lot of like people my age and then people older than me that are really watching a lot. And I think it's just people that have been through, I think it's like people in their 20s and up, because we've been in middle school. And so we find that funny. We're like, oh yeah, I remember whenever I was that age. So
absolutely. Yeah. It has definitely struck a chord. That's for sure. Kind of going backwards. Did you grow up in Kansas?
I did. I'm a Kansas girl through and through.
Yeah.
I grew up in Wichita. So pretty central Kansas, South Central. And no, it's not South Central. Actually, don't ask me. You didn't ask, but I can't go into geography because I'm going to end up sounding real dumb here real fast.
Oh no, we won't go. Yeah. That's
I grew up in Wichita, and I went to school at Pitt State, not in Pennsylvania. It's in like Southeast Kansas, and it's a Division II school. And so from there, it was like, oh, where do you go after this? And in Kansas, Kansas City's kind of that big city. So I was like, well, I got to go to the big city, and I just love it. I love Kansas City.
nice. I would love to visit. I've not been there, but I've heard really good things about it. It's just a great city.
Where are you at?
Tennessee, so Knoxville. So about 3 hours from Nashville. So we're kind of in the same Midwest, South. We're kind of in the same kind of belt. So what was school like for you as a kid? Did you enjoy middle school, high school? What was that like?
It was interesting for me. I think I think that most people, when they look back, of course, we all feel like our own lives, we went through profound transitions, but really we kind of all just went through the same thing in a lot of ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we could all say that about ourselves. But looking back, I feel like every level, like elementary to middle to high school, I really saw big changes happening in me. I was always like I was kind of behind my peers growing up. I'm an August birthday, so I was really young for my grades. And like my maturity was always a little bit behind. I didn't really start like caring about romantic relationships until after all my friends already were, like little things like that. And I was kind of weird. I didn't find my embarrassment gene until a little later in life.
Right.
And so, I think that I had a really enjoyable like elementary school. I was involved in a lot of sports. I lived I had a great life. I mean, I had a lot of really great friends, but yeah, I was kind of weird. I was kind of a weird kid. And then whenever I was in 8th grade, my parents split up. And that was a really hard age for that. Every age is hard, but that was a really hard age because I was, I think, old enough to know about life a little bit, but young enough to not really understand why this was happening. And I didn't have the maturity to understand how to handle those emotions coming with it. And so I would say like the start of high school for me, I don't remember all that much looking back because I do think I was kind of dealing with a lot of the trauma that came from that separation in 8th grade. And I went through a lot of maturity because like I said, I was kind of behind. And then it was like I was fast forwarded into maturity because of the natural responsibilities that come from now having parents that are separated. So it was kind of a weird switch over for me. But overall, I had a really great childhood. I mean, I had great friends, involved in sports, just good memories.
That's good. I similar backgrounds. My parents split up around the same time too. And I remember that time where you have to just ramp up your maturity level and you have to almost become an adult faster than you want to. You kind of miss out on some childhood events because you really have to you're learning about problems that really you shouldn't have to worry about in that age. So yeah, it's tough.
I think even if like my parents, let's say, had done, which of course, I mean, this was their first divorce. They didn't know what they were doing. And, I'm at that age now where it's like, oh yeah, my parents are just humans too. But I think like even if they would have handled it perfectly, you're like I think you said it perfect. Kids are just exposed to problems that they're not ready to process yet. And I even remember my parents saying like, I can't explain to you why this is happening because you'll understand when you're older. And that'd make me so mad. And now it's like, no, I really wouldn't have understood it. And there's just there's gonna be hurt that comes from it, no matter how well parents handle it or whatever. Cause it's a drastic change in your life, but, I think that kids naturally grow up through divorce because it's like a coping mechanism as well during it. Again, even if your parents are like, no, that's not your responsibility. I think there's like something that kicks into gear of like, yeah, but I need to problem solve some of this that's going on of splitting my time and, your emotions are feeling separated and split in half and it's just going to cause some weird stuff to go on.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And you just looking back on it in your childhood, you think, oh, I didn't really have, I guess, take the time to enjoy time with my friends sometimes, or because I was worried about, you kind of get into some behind the curtain of like, oh, we're struggling with money, or, my dad is moved on and I'm living with mom and, we're not doing so well financially. So you're kind of exposed to some adult problems that really can cause anxiety, in an early age.
Well, it kind of feels like I think as a kid that you're going through the breakup with your parents. I mean, you are, but it was really weird to watch my parents be heartbroken and not be able to like help them and like take that pain away. And I don't know. So I'm a middle child. So like, I'm like I don't know if this is because I'm a middle child or if it's because are you like into the Enneagram types at all?
Kinda. I mean, I've been talked to about some of that, but I've not really gotten into and like exploring it, but tell me about it though. Sorry.
I am totally bought it. Like, I think it's just so interesting. I don't think it's like your end all be all personality, but I have found it really interesting to like learn more about myself and like about my peers and my family through it. Anyway, I'm an Enneagram 9, which is the peacemaker. So like I'm like debilitatingly indecisive, but I also am really good at mediating and like talking through things and like, conflict resolution in a lot of ways. And so I think that really amplified that side of my personality at that age as well.
Kind of gets you in tune with trying to figure out those problems and helping. Because when you have your parents split up, you are trying to figure out, well, who do I talk to? Who do I help? Because parents naturally are not at odds, but if it's a messy divorce, they're kind of going back and forth. And sometimes, which happened in our case, the kids are kind of used, I guess, to some form of manipulation, but I don't think it's done maliciously, but you just kind of fall into that, like, when you're with one parent over the other. So it's difficult to maneuver for sure.
Absolutely.
Did you, speaking of that, it's heavy to go through that, but you have such a great sense of humor. Were you funny as a kid, and did that help you get through some of that?
Oh God. It depends on who you ask. My family likes to give me a really hard time for like, just like my personality as a kid. I was like, people described me as a kid as being goofy. Like I didn't have a mature sense of humor. It was like a very immature sense of humor. But did I like to make people laugh? Did I try to be funny? Yes. I think I naturally was kind of awkward and quirky, and I wasn't very shy. And so I would kind of do these, like, it was probably kind of cringe to watch. Like my mom was probably like, oh God, Molly, like, what are you doing? But did it like kind of make people laugh, or like, did it give people a reason to not be embarrassed themselves? Probably, So it wasn't the same kind of humor that you probably see on my social medias. But yeah, definitely, I think from a young age, I wasn't afraid. This makes me sound really egotistical, but I wasn't shy. If attention was on me, I wasn't shy. I liked to do performances for my family, and I liked to take the goofy picture and, whatever it might be. So, yeah, I guess it did kind of stem from childhood a little bit.
Now, do you, you said you're a middle child. Do you have two sisters, two brother and sister? What do you?
Two sisters. Yeah, I have an older sister, and then I have a younger sister. She's like about 6 years younger. She was a surprise, the best surprise. And so she has a bit of an age gap from me and my older sister.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
We're pretty close though.
Yeah, I've got two brothers, and we're about 7 years apart. So
we're just opposites, but like
two
sides of the same coin.
Two same coin, exactly.
Are you the youngest?
I'm the oldest, actually. So
oldest.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I would have pissed you off growing up.
Right. Getting attention, I would have been upset. Do you think, is there competition there, do you think, between siblings? I know with brothers, there's always like, it could be good or bad. You're trying to make each other laugh, but you're also like, kind of getting in there with one another. But did you find that too?
It's interesting. I don't think that there was. My older sister, we're not similar. Which is kind of why we work. And we were never not close. It's not that we fought that much. Like, we fought, definitely. Mm-hmm. And it was like petty sister stuff. We more just were so different that we didn't spend like our early years together that much. Like, mm-hmm. I was literally, she probably thought I was so annoying because I was a goofball. And she was so practical and logical minded. She's very successful in the medical field, very type A in a lot of ways. And like, again, we're pretty opposite, and I'm very type B and chaotic. And so I think she would look at me and be like, you done performing for everyone now? Like, like, can we get back to what we were doing? And it's really great. And then my little sister, she's just, I think, far enough behind that there was never competition there. I mean, there was always enough of an age gap that it was just kind of like, oh, it's my little sister, And so I don't know that there was competition. Also, my older sister, she was so successful. I mean, dominating in every sport, straight A's, all the things. And my motivations were like, what's going to be my after school snack? Mm-hmm. Like who's going to ask me to the prom? And like, I was very, I think, superficial minded at that age, which also could have been a coping mechanism for like the divorce and stuff.
Sure.
That I don't think I ever like looked at her and was like, oh, she's always better than me. I think it was just something known of like, Megan is better at me in sports. Like she just is. And that's great. Like, I know I'm not going to go play college volleyball someday, but like, I'm going to do my best right now. I just kind of was pretty self-aware about that, you know?
Yeah. Didn't bother you. It's just kind of, you had your own stuff going on. Yeah. So it wasn't a big deal.
And we do, even now it's kind of nice, you know, she's really successful in her field and, you know, I'm doing okay in what I do. And so we get to each kind of have our own pride. And my little sister's still in college, so she's still figuring out her identity and all those good things. So.
Wow. Well, how did you get on the teaching path? Did you know from the very beginning that that's what you wanted to do, or did you kind of fall into that?
I kind of fell into it. I knew that I wasn't going to be the type to become a doctor or like an accountant or whatever it may be. I knew I wouldn't be in medical, science, math, not for me. This is really funny. This is going to be literally the most uninspiring story that you've ever heard. I went to college. Like I said, I was really indecisive and I was undeclared. And so I was taking gen eds. Finally, my advisor sat me down and was like, hey, you're out of gen eds. You got to choose a major. And I was like, no. So I like called my dad in tears and I was like, I have no passions in life. I don't know what I want to do. Like what? Because I was never that kid that was like fantasizing. I think if you go back into my preschool book, it said, what do you want to be whenever you grow up? And I said a Krispy Kreme worker because I wanted free donuts. Like
goals. Gotta have goals.
Literally, thank you. And they had cool hats. They wore those like pointy hats. And so, you know, finally I just kind of had thought about it. I was like, okay. At the time I was working as a teacher assistant in an elementary school because I'd worked at a daycare in high school. It was just a good part-time job. And I was like, you know, I do feel really comfortable just being in a school. Like when I walk down those halls, I don't feel like intimidated. It feels, mind you, it's an elementary school, but like I felt comfortable in the setting. And so I thought I could see myself doing that. We're just going to go with it. And so they were like, okay, do you want to do older or younger kids? And I was like, let's go with older kids. Just kind of flipping a coin here. And they were like, all right, what subject? And I was like, well, I was the least bad at English. And so I chose that. And probably within 2 weeks, I fell in love with it. I was loving the literature side of things, like the actual English side of it. I knew I felt comfortable as a teacher and speaking in front of people and that sort of thing. And so it just kind of just trusting my intuition just kind of worked out for the best for me. And I definitely believe like this is what I was meant to do. So
that's so awesome. Do you feel like we have those moments in life where you know when you're doing something you're meant to? There's something that clicks, I think, where you know it's like a little message inside that.
Yeah, I think that was one of the first times I can remember. Because I think before, everything I did was kind of already just decided for me. Mm-hmm. You know, where I go to school, even like the sports I played I was a sports kid. That was my activities, my hobbies. And even that, like, it just was kind of a known thing in our family. I'm sure that if I went to my parents and I said, I want to learn to play the piano, they would have supported me. But that never even crossed my mind because I think my older sister played sports. I started playing since I have memories. And so I think it just, where I went to school was decided. So I think where I chose to go to college and what my major was the first time I had to make real decisions in my life and trust that it was going to be okay and work out. And that was really hard for me. And I think looking back, that's the first time that I was like, got to feel that really cool sense of peace of, wow, I am happy doing this. Wow, I'm happy with where I'm at. Like this is working out.
And I made this decision and and
I can trust myself. I think that every time that happens, you learn to trust yourself more in your decision making.
When you started out to do the social media stuff, were you surprised at how quickly it blew up and how popular it became?
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm not kidding you. I had never posted on TikTok. I didn't even have a TikTok account. Well, I did, but it was one of those like auto-generated usernames where it's like user 2593, like.
Right.
And so I had literally one night I made an account. I think I was at my part-time job. I made an account. I posted it, no hashtags or anything. And I like went to bed. And I was like, wow, there's like quite a few views on this. It's kind of crazy. And I woke up and it was like 600,000 views by the next morning. And I was like, what in the world is going on? It was really crazy.
Whoa.
So yes, to say I was surprised is an understatement. I was shocked.
Was that one of your comments from kids posts that blew up like that? The 600,000?
Yeah. My first ever, well, it's at quite a few now. My first ever one is it's like things that my 8th graders have said to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm like in like a green sweater, and it's like the one where the kid says, I felt that in my nuggets. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yeah.
That was the one that blew up. Yeah. That
Nice.
started it all. It's pretty crazy.
Have you got comments from other teachers? Like, do you feel a connection like that? You know, they find humor in that because they've been through it. Is there a connection there with some other teachers?
I definitely think so. You know, I think most teachers that like I knew they had already heard a lot of those quotes because, you know, you would say, guess what this kid said to me today? Like, you know, they kind of had already heard them. But what most teachers say is like, oh my God, that is like the perfect representation of what we hear every day. Like the stuff that is said to us. And I think it's, like kind of a universal thing for teachers. And then I had posted one about how pretty much me saying like, I have so much respect for elementary teachers. Like I couldn't do your job. And I was kind of explaining why. And so many of them were like, wow, I feel so seen right now. And I think that's the thing is we all just want to feel like seen, you know, and we want others to understand our experience. And I think teaching is so niche, which it's actually like the first job you think of when you think of basic careers, but the actual act of teaching and what goes into being a teacher, truly only teachers will understand. Like, I don't think anyone will know until they do it. And so I think whenever teachers are like, oh my gosh, yes, like that, yes, that's it. That's what it's like. I think it just feels really validating.
Yeah, it's like someone in the field is you're just sharing that experience with someone. You're in the foxholes with someone else, so they get it and they can pick up on. You know, they probably think, oh, I've been there. You know, I've had that same kind of stuff said to me or about me or whatever else. You have to have a thick skin as a teacher, I think, right? Especially nowadays.
Yes, middle school for sure. My favorite John Mulaney quote. Do you know who John Mulaney is? Like, do you the comedian?
No, I think I probably would if I saw him, but
yeah, you'd probably recognize him. He has a quote from one of his bits where he's talking about, he's like, the most terrifying thing in this world is a 13-year-old. He said, because like they will make fun of you, but like in an accurate way. Because they're old enough to be like, yeah, you don't look so good. And but they still have the audacity to say it. They still have the impulsiveness to say it. So they're just like this crazy mix. So yeah, I've had to develop some pretty thick skin over the years. And like, I've had to become pretty secure within myself really fast.
Does it surprise you at how smart these kids as comedy writers are? Because some of these comments are like, oh my gosh, that's like something out of a stand-up routine. It's like hilarious.
They're so funny.
Yeah.
It's literally, that's why I whenever people comment, they're like, all right, you're making it up at this point. I'm like, I'd be famous if I was. If I was that funny, I can't come up with that. I don't think I wasn't even that funny as that, like at that age. Like it just, they're so funny. And I don't know where it comes from. I don't know if like, I think inspiration kind of comes from social media. Probably they have more exposure to like different comedy. I don't remember as a kid watching anything comedy, maybe a movie here and there, but it was like Disney Channel jokes, which like no one's really laughing at those, you know? So I think, I don't know if they have that and like that kind of helps their creative minds go, but like these kids have me deep belly laughing. They either have me sitting there like doing self-talk of like, nope, like you are smart, you are kind, like you're okay,
people
Molly.
like you.
Or they have me like genuinely deep belly laughing so hard. Like that's why it's a little crazy every day. You never know which side you're going to get.
It's hilarious.
Do you think that my high schoolers are going to be like, I don't know. What do you think about like if my high schoolers are going to be if they're going to have like crazier comments or more mild reactions.
I think maybe the kids in middle school, there's still that sense of purity, I guess, where they're making comments, but it's not as like dagger in the back kind of comment. High schoolers may be a little meaner, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, you'll have to tell me what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm a little afraid that they're going to be mean and I'll be like, I can't repeat that online. Like I'm not going to say that to a camera.
You're going to have to bleep stuff out.
Well, there's a lot that I've wanted to post, but I'm like, I can't say that. Like there's some really funny stories. It's just like, I don't want to say that on the internet, you know?
Right. So that might be for your paid subscribers. Maybe they could pay for.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Well, I read recently a Newsweek article where they interviewed you, and one of the quotes, let me see if I really loved, you said, my kids might poke fun at me and have some brutal one-liners, but they are all incredible humans whom I am proud to have taught. And that's so kind. I think it's such a great way to look at that. And you really try to strive to let kids know it's okay to make fun of yourself and it's okay to laugh at yourself. And it seems like your kids, there's that bond there. Did you set out that that's what you wanted to create in your class, that you wanted to have that honesty and kind of be yourself in class?
Yeah. I would say that's become my top priority, especially for the age group that I teach. I think obviously at any age, it's important to learn that you can be yourself, especially kids from a young age who are in their formative years. But I think in middle and high school, when I think back to how I was, mostly in high school, I was so worried about what everybody thought of me. I remember walking down the hall in high school thinking to myself, don't smile. You'll look like, don't draw attention to yourself. Like I went through a few really weird, insecure years of like, I just thought you think everyone's thinking about you, but really they're thinking about themselves. And I think that if I can give kids a break from that in my room, that's one of the best things that I can do for them. If I can give them the chance to take their mask off in my room and just kind of hang loose, then we've created something really special in the classroom, because I think that's what I wish I could do a lot. And I think the older I get, the more secure you become with yourself as you become an adult and your frontal lobe finishes developing and all the things, people do start to feel more comfortable to do that. But they're still at that age where, their mindsets are shifting so fast and they're growing up so fast and taking in information that, especially with online and the comparison game and whatever it may be. And I don't think I knew that was going to end up being one of my main goals in the classroom until it already happened. Like my first year of teaching, you just kind of go in and say, all right, let's try our best. Like, I don't even really know. And then as the year went on, I think I saw that happening. I think I saw a classroom community developing, and I felt like it felt like magic. Walking in a room and being like, wow, like this is just a really cool group of people. And like, there's something really magical about watching two kids that maybe would have never crossed paths. Maybe one's popular and one's not popular. And suddenly they're just having a random conversation in class. And you're like, I don't know how this happened, but this is like really special to watch, even though you're never going to say that out loud to them. And I think that's become my main goal. And it's happened for me mostly because I end up embarrassing myself first. And I think I mentioned that in that Newsweek article. Hold on one second.
Oh, you're fine.
Do you mind? That's okay. I'm so sorry. I didn't lock my door.
Oh, you're fine.
Anyway, I think that I embarrass myself really easily, and it kind of allows those kids to be like, oh, we can poke fun at her instead of that everyone else poking fun at me. And if that's how it goes, I'm fine with that. Like, I'm not going to like orchestrate these embarrassing moments just for it to happen, but it tends to naturally happen for me a lot. So,
wow. Have you seen a decline in some anxiety among kids and with their peers? Like they being able to do that and playing off you with some comments and just being themselves.
I've got to think that some of that peer pressure may have kind of gone away or melted away some of the anxiety.
I mean, I would hope so. I don't think it's a foolproof method. Like for example, last year I had a student who there was a student in one of my classes that I felt like we had a pretty good rapport in the room, and it was pretty pretty good community. And I was going to have students do even just a short snippet of speaking out loud in class, because most kids don't like that. Most people don't like that. And I had one student who I think was probably pretty insecure within themselves. And by doing so, I think made kind of like to make other people feel insecure to cope with their own feelings, which is normal for kids that age to do. Anyway, different student had come up to me and said, and this was like towards the end of the year, and another student had come up to me and was like, I really don't want to do this. And I was like, you have to speak for 20 seconds max. Like, I promise it's a good way to challenge yourself. And so then I kind of was asking, like, why are you so adamant about not? Are you nervous to speak in front of me, the whole class, whatever? And they kind of looked at that student and was like, and I was like, is it them that makes you uncomfortable? They're like, yeah, they make fun of everyone. I was like, man, like that really stinks to hear, because here I am thinking we have this great classroom community, and here you are still feeling a little anxious, So I think that for a lot of kids, it can start to melt it away, but it's not, it's still a hard age, and they're only in my room for a little bit of time, and they still got to go out into the halls and go to lunch and be on social media. And so, like I said, you hope that you can help them and help them get through that and feel secure within themselves and feel okay with being embarrassed sometimes or being themselves. But at the end of the day, I have to remind myself sometimes it just takes time, and it takes growing up too, and learning, hey, that one person let's not let them determine how we feel about ourselves, that sort of thing. Like they have their own problems that they need to solve. I promise you, so.
Oh yeah. And social media has made it so difficult too for kids today. Stuff that we didn't maybe have to go through coming up through school, but social media is a whole nother layer.
Right. Oh, because I had some, Instagram was like starting off, but even at that time, like I remember actually in high school, probably one of the most profound things I did for myself, which is kind of funny because I was in high school. Like, what did I know at that age? I didn't just like delete my Instagram app. I remember for probably 2 years, I deleted my account. Like I just didn't have an Instagram, and my parents didn't enforce that. I don't know why I did it. And I did it for 2 years. I just had Facebook, and which at that time was kind of lame, for everyone had Instagram. Mm-hmm. But I think for some reason, whatever reason I did it, it was probably the best thing I had ever done for myself, because I think I had recognized I was really comparing myself really bad. And probably at that age, it was really great for me. And so I just like am desperate for kids to have a break from social media, because I know how great it can be for you,
Oh yeah. And mental health.
Which is ironic because now I post on it.
Well, yeah, but it's kind of the anti-post in a way. It's kind of like you're trying to fight the good fight, But mental health is so important for kids too today, because there's so much going on. There's like big world problems, and it affects kids because they see stuff on social media, and it's just, I can't imagine what not only the bullying but other things that go on. It's got to be tough for them.
Absolutely. I think so too.
The style that you have as a teacher, did you have a teacher growing up that you kind of remember today still, and it kind of, I don't know, not to say you model your style completely after them, but do you still have a teacher that sticks with you and that's you kind of are trying to make proud in a way, or like, and how you teach?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I haven't thought about this in a long time. But back whenever you had asked me what made me want to be a teacher, I guess I didn't answer it totally fairly, because there was a teacher, now that you say this. I think that back in high school, I never had a plan for what I was going to be, where I was going to go to school. But I remember sitting in junior year language arts class, Mr. Mans, He was a real young teacher, had only taught a few years, was real energetic. And I remember just thinking, if I could do what he does, I think I'd have a happy life. Like, I think I could do that. And that was probably one of the first times that I was like, I could see myself doing this. Did that stick with me? No, because, I know what happened. My senior year, I went through, they had like one of those teaching programs in high school where like it replaces some of your classes and you would go shadow teachers and do those things. And I hated it. I was in a middle school and I was like, I hate this. I'm not going to be a teacher. So then the one thing that I could see myself doing, I was like, it's not for me. That's why I had the identity crisis in college. I was like, I have no passions, whatever. And so then I think I just was like, let's just try it. And I fell in love with it. Wow. But Mr. Mans, I think he taught a little different because he had conversations with us more than other teachers had. It wasn't so much. I remember going into his class and actually feeling like my brain wasn't so focused on the superficial stuff of high school during that class. I was like actually thinking about the novel we were reading because he was just talking to us about it. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of interesting, And it wasn't just like, oh, read these pages. I'm probably just going to spark note them and I'm going to answer these questions on this worksheet and take a test and then go read more pages on my own. It was like, oh, we're actually, I don't know. He just made me want to talk about it and dive deeper into it. And it just didn't seem so like formal. It didn't seem so cookie cutter or whatever. I think how education was a lot whenever in older generations, which is just kind of how it was. That's how you learn to teach. And so I think I saw that and was like, I like this. This could be really fun. And I think I liked the thought of that age group because you could have those conversations and it could be more of a open concept a little bit more. So I think that kind of, I don't think I remember class enough to copy my style based off of him. But I definitely prioritize conversation and discussion in my class and sharing of like interpretations and ideas and thoughts so kids can learn how to hear other perspectives and share their perspectives, and it's okay if your perspective changes, etc.
Well, I think what you're saying about Mr. Mans, it's kind of like what you're doing with you respect them, and he obviously respected you and the other kids, so you have those conversations. And I think when kids feel like they're respected and you draw them into that conversation, kids love that. They love to be able to be included. So
absolutely, it kind of gives them a little sense of ownership.
Yeah, it's not just, we got to go to the next class, but it's so great to know that kids would look forward to that class and want to be involved. Like,
so I don't know. I don't have some of my students last year. I had a lot of students that say to me, they say, I like you, but I hate your class. I'm like, okay, why is that? And they're like, I just hate ELA. And to that I say, fair enough. Like, I don't have to be your favorite subject, but if you say I don't like you, then it's like, ooh, that's a bigger conversation. Yeah. So, it just kind of depends. It's okay if school is school. Like at the end of the day, I'm like, it's going to be work. You're not going to love writing an essay. You're not going to not everyone's going to love Shakespeare the way that I love Shakespeare. But if I can like get them, because I just know that feeling of like, I could be giving the lesson of a lifetime, but if their brain is focused on the fight that they just had with their boyfriend or girlfriend, they're not hearing a word that I'm saying. Mm-mm. And so if like I can give them that natural brain break of like, hey, take a minute and just like, you don't have to think about your life during this, then like I succeeded that day. And I might not do it every day, but that's kind of the goal,
Yeah. Yeah. If you can break them away.
Reading should be entertainment.
Yeah.
It should be enjoyable, like watching TV. So like, let's talk about it,
And that's something that you hope they're going to carry with them the rest of their lives, love for reading. Wow.
Oh yeah. That's a big thing we've been talking about with these back to school days is how to try to get kids a little bit more passionate about reading.
I mean, there's so many distractions, right? I am, not as much as I would like to be. I usually, what I enjoy is audiobooks. I really love that because I can put it in and like do other things.
Said that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's just.
Oh, I have been on the audiobook train for years now because I tell people that. I'm like, you can put in a book get your laundry done, do the dishes. Sometimes when I'm listening to a really good book, I add chores to my to-do list so I can keep listening.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so productive.
Oh yeah, and when you get out of the car,
it's amazing.
Oh yeah, and when you get out of the car, you hate it because you gotta miss some of that, and you can't wait to get back in and put it back in.
I know.
Some of the is it true that one of the comments the 8th graders say got like 11 million views? Is that right, or did I see that right?
One of my videos.
Yeah, one of the posts got like 11 million.
The one that I told you about, the very first one, the original one, is at 17 million right now.
Gosh, that's the very first one that you did.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Very first one. It's pinned to the top of my TikTok page right now if you need to find it.
Do you have a favorite comment?
God.
I know there's so many that you could choose from. I can tell you a couple of my favorites.
I think that my favorite one, just because I got to live it was so funny, was that I felt that one in my nuggets. Because in that moment, it was so funny. I was in the middle of doing my lesson, and it was whole class engagement strategies. I'm in my flow. I'm facilitating this, all these things. And this kid is already class clown, has you laughing just from the little, he'll stand up out of his desk, do a little dance move, sit back down. And you're like, what is going on in your brain, man? Just a funny kid. And the way he said it under his breath. And so he said it, he got the answer right. And he was like, yeah, I felt that one of my nuggets. And I think I was up at the board and I just turned around and he goes, I did not mean to say that out loud. I'm so sorry. He was mortified. And it had me laughing for 10 minutes straight. It was so funny. So that one I think has to be my favorite. Now,
do you show what's the best way to do it? Do you show that it's hilarious in front of the kids, or do you kind of hold it back and go, oh, that's really funny, but I can't?
Depends on the comment. That one I laughed.
Yeah.
The whole class laughed. So sometimes it's good to have those little moments of that was funny. That was funny.
Yeah,
you know?
It's original.
Some of the ones where the kids are mean, it depends.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll say things where I'm that was unwarranted. Yeah. I'm not mean to you. Why are you mean to me? I'll just kind of say that, but the key is to not act like it hurt your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there have been a few times where I do let my emotions show. I've had kids say really mean things to me, and half the time I don't even know if they mean it. They might a little bit, but I think they just want to see a reaction or they want to show off for their friends.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I really will be hey, that was completely unwarranted. And let's have a chat about that because you shouldn't say that to other people. That just isn't.
Yeah.
But most of the time I'll either ignore it. Sometimes I'll just look at a kid and be okay. Or I'll they'll say something and then their friends will be ooh, are you just going to let him get away with that, Miss Dugan? And, he'll be my favorite is when a student's am I the worst kid that you've ever had? They'll be proud of it.
Oh yeah.
So my favorite response is being if you think this is the worst, you have no idea what I've heard. And then they're oh, you wish you were the worst kid.
That pours water on that immediately. No, you're nowhere.
It just depends. It just depends on the kid and the environment and are they doing it for attention? What? It totally depends on how you respond.
Some of them is so smart and so quick. One of my favorites is trash bag pants. I mean, that's just
that one was funny. I laughed at that one. That one's funny.
That was quick.
Grandpa's couch. I laughed.
Grandpa's couch.
Yeah. Or most of the time I'll be that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. When you look at it and okay, and I think they've got to get a kick out of it though, to really think, oh yeah, I said something and it was funny. You could have some future stand-up comics in class. You never know.
I know. And it's kind of fun too, because then we have inside joke that kind of builds classroom community too. It's a fine line of don't let kids disrespect you and let them get just do whatever they want and think that it's okay. But it's okay if they poke fun and you let it become an inside joke. You know, you just have to have that kind of sixth sense of where the line is and base it off of that.
I mean, you have such a great way of it's perfect. Like when you're doing the posts and you're going over the checklist, have you always, you've spoken a little bit about this, but have you always been able to take that and like laugh at yourself and not take it so seriously and let your guard down? Or has that been a journey as well?
I think that every first year teacher, it probably takes a little time. Like I remember the first time a kid called me some names and I went into my mentor's room and cried, you know, because you're just like, I can't believe a kid said that to me. And then by the second time you're like, okay, you're just emotionally escalated. Let's calm down and talk later. Like that, you know, go sit with, you know, you send them wherever they need to go. And so it's a little bit of a journey in the beginning of your career, I think. And it's like the beginning of my career started out pretty mild, like a kid looking at you saying like, oh, are you sick today? And you're not sick. And you're like, oh, thanks so much.
Nice
I
comment.
just look like this. Which I think a lot of people have gotten just from people in general. They've kind of progressed as the years have gone on. I don't know why that is, but the severity of the comments have kind of progressed. And I don't know if that's because I become more confident in what I do, that like I don't know if like something about the environment has changed that I create or what, which almost sounds like a bad thing, but I definitely took a little time to be secure enough to let it roll off your shoulders and find the humor in it, you know? And I think also, you know, sharing it with laughing about it with your coworkers and saying, guess what this kid said to me? And you're just like, what is our job? Like, what are we doing? You know, that's funny. Or you go home and, you know, you share a quote with your friends and they're like laughing and you're like, that is pretty funny. You know, over time it's like, okay, yeah, don't take it so serious. It's not that deep.
Yeah. And I think that's why you're such an important role model for the kids, because you do that. You show them that, okay, yeah, we'll laugh at that, you know, whatever. But I feel like that's a way for the kids to kind of see that you're comfortable in your own skin and they're able to kind of start to move into that a little bit and not be so anxious or worry about, people are going to say things to us out in life. Life's hard, but I think if they can start to learn to adapt a little bit and say, okay, let it roll off of them a little bit easier. It's not always easy to do, but I think you're doing great things with being a role model and showing that, because I think it's hard for kids as they go out into the world. I mean, absolutely,
big time. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
I try my best.
You do a great job. Do you hope? What is your hope for the kids? Do you ever think about a kid one day in the future looking back, telling their kids about Miss Dugan or an event in their life that they kind of say, oh, wow, I remember I learned this in Miss Dugan's class? Do you ever kind of flash forward with that?
Yeah. Right now, my biggest hope is that my 8th graders remember to capitalize I, because they don't do that. No, like they literally don't. I don't know what it is. I think teachers across America will agree. I don't know what it is. They stopped capitalizing I. And you're like, I know you learned this really young. Like, what is going on here? It's like truly like an epidemic. It's so bad. No, my favorite quote is from Maya Angelou. Or is it Maya Angelou? I think it's Angelou.
I think it's Angelou.
I don't know. Okay. And I might mess this up a little bit, but it's something like, people forget what you did and people will forget what you said, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
I love that quote.
Which is so true, because the people that made me feel bad, I probably don't remember what they said. Maybe sometimes, but most of the time I don't really remember what they said. But usually you just remember, I didn't like being around that person. They never made me feel comfortable. They never made me feel welcome. They never made me, whatever. And the people that I felt happy around and safe around and at peace around, you might not know exactly what it is that they did, but you remember feeling that way. And so I think at the end of the day, I really try to push that onto my kids as well, of like, hey, you can say something nice to a person, but if you are not welcoming to them or whatever it might be. You know, just I try to really embody that quote as best I can and kind of teach that quote to my kids through, you know, just kindness. But I think it's realistic to remind myself and to have to be okay with the fact that I might not have been perfect around each kid. You know, I think that it's always my goal for students to look back and say, I enjoyed my time in that room. Of course, I want them to remember everything they learned in my class, but they're not going to. I don't remember everything from my sophomore year English class, but Mr. Mans made me feel comfortable and like my voice mattered. And I remember on an essay that I wrote, he said, "You have a beautiful way with words." And that stuck with me. And it's those little things that I guess I hope that they can look back on and feel. So then maybe they can go on and make other people feel that way too. And, you know, if I think about it, I've now taught over 500 kids.
Wow.
Which is really crazy and a little scary because you're like, I have now impacted 500 kids' lives. It would probably be crazy to say that I've been a perfect, every single one of them is going to look back and say, yes, I feel that way about Miss Dugan. That's probably not going to happen, especially because I'm probably not going to be the mentor for each kid, and that's okay. But of course, that's always my goal, you know?
And if you can reach a few.
And I think that's most teachers' goals.
Yeah.
Yeah, they always say if you help even one kid, then it was worth it. And so I think that has to be your reminder in a job that can be really overstimulating, really tiring, really sacrificial, is, hey, you don't have to be the savior for every kid. But if you even touched one, then it was worth it. Because I think as teachers, we feel this pressure to be everything for every kid.
Yeah.
But I have to remind myself, these kids are going to have 7 other teachers looking out for them. So do what you can, be as present as you can in front of the kids in front of you. And it'll be what it'll be. Just go to bed at night knowing that you did your best to be a positive influence for them and hope that everyone else was, and that, you know, we didn't let kids fall through the crack. You know, it's a team effort for sure.
Yeah. And then the next day is a new day. So you can, if you do have any kind of regret, like, oh, I should have done this, you can always start over the next day and come back fresh.
I mean, I had a student last year that at some point they just were not vibing with me. They thought, you know, I was getting onto them more than other kids, which I truly did not believe, but, you know, they felt that way. And my co-teacher was a really good friend of mine. We talked and I was like, hey, I'm not going to be able to have a breakthrough with this kid. I'm just not. They've already decided they're not vibing with me. And she was like, we get along really well. I'll talk to them. And, you know, whenever they would get frustrated with me, I'd be like, you want to go take a break in that room? And they're like, yeah. And that's great because they did have a person, and it's okay that it wasn't always me, you know? Because sometimes that's just how it goes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess you vibe with different people. I guess you kind of connect with. One thing I do know that you're doing, you're helping to break down that awkward, often unapproachable wall between teacher and student. You're kind of removing that a little bit so that kids feel more comfortable coming to you with even maybe a problem, or just knowing that you're a person too, and you're not just this teacher that's kind of unapproachable.
Yeah. Well, that's the goal. I mean, yeah. That's definitely the goal, which, is kind of why I just gave a talk in Arizona. And one of the things that to staff of teachers, and one of the things that I was reminding them was or that I was joking about with them was, you know, so many people will think about the start of the school year and say like, oh, you know, it's probably so fun. And like, you're not really doing anything yet in class. It's probably pretty easy. But teachers know it's like the most exhausting few weeks because you're working so hard all day long to be present and to make kids feel comfortable and to break down that barrier of all this stuff that like you're on so much because you don't want to be standoffish. You don't want to be. And so it's definitely, I think, a goal for most teachers during the start of the year.
What would you say to a teacher? Maybe it's their first year and they're really anxious and maybe worried about how things are going to go. What would you offer as advice? You've been through that first year.
The first piece of advice I'd offer is it's okay if your instruction isn't perfect. Your kids are going to learn something. And I think that when I look back on my first year, I probably, when it comes to the actual act of teaching and like content, I probably didn't do that great. I probably didn't. I've learned a lot, and it's okay if it's not great or you're like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of like doing stuff and I hope that they're learning it. And I don't really know how to know if they're learning it. They're going to learn something. So take a little bit of pressure off yourself. It's okay. I would also really encourage them to not be afraid to say, I'm sorry, which sounds, I'm afraid that my advice sounds a little bit pessimistic, but I think teachers need to hear more often, it's okay. Let's normalize not being perfect at our jobs. Let's normalize. So for example, let's normalize having bad days. I remember a few years ago, I was going to school and I was like having a really bad week. I was like really overstimulated and I called my mom crying on the way to school. And I remember she's not a teacher and she was like, honey, just go and have the best, craziest day. Be so crazy fun and do something really fun in your room. She was like trying to cheer me up. I started crying harder because what I realized I needed to hear from someone was, hey, just go be a boring teacher today. Just go survive. Your job is to make sure those kids are safe and cared for and learning, not to be the most overwhelmingly fun. Someday you're going to feel okay enough to be fun again, but today might not be that day. And so I want to give first-year teachers the reminder of it's okay if there's a day where you're like, I forgot about this email that a parent sent me 2 weeks ago. What do I do? Just say, I'm sorry, learn from it, and ask them, answer their question. Oh, you're behind on grading? Apologize to your kids. Say, hey, I'm human too. I'm sorry. I'm going to work on it. Let's talk about goal setting. My goal is to get better at grading. What's yours? You accidentally singled a student out in class because we're humans and we don't always react perfectly. Of course, we never want to single a kid out. Pull them to the side after class and say, hey, I realized what I had done. I'm really sorry. That probably felt really terrible. And I won't do that again to you. I really am sorry that wasn't fair to you. And guess what? Now that kid's going to respect you. They're going to say, wow, they actually care about my feelings. They weren't just out to get me. And I'm still going to trust my teacher, even though they just accidentally singled me out and it didn't feel so good, So don't be afraid to say I'm sorry because you're not going to be perfect at this because you're dealing with other humans too. And I think just the final thing is try to be present. Try to embrace those comedic moments, because that's where you remember why teaching is so fun. On the really hard days, the days that make you laugh are like, wow, this is also a really cool job. I get a laugh with these really funny kids. I don't think my friend over here at their cubicle in whatever office building is deep belly laughing 3 times a day, So it just try to be present is my final piece of advice.
Wow. It's excellent. Are you happy?
I am happy. I am happy.
You feel like you found your calling? Can you see yourself teaching in some aspect forever? I know you don't know what the future holds, but.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you're asking me that. Last year, I thought I was going to quit teaching, actually. It was my 5th year, and I just was feeling really burnt out. And I was like, whoa, I get why teachers. And the year before is interesting. I was like, this is the best year of my life. I will teach for forever. And then the next year I was like, I don't even know if I can do this for another week. I don't know how do people do this for a full career? And I did a lot of soul searching and I had a lot of support behind me, and hindsight's 2020. I was going through a lot of really hard personal stuff, which obviously affected my whole worldview of my life. And so I think that was the first time that I came to terms with the fact of this might not be my forever. I think I could be in education for forever. I think I could be a teacher for forever. but I'm allowing myself to explore a bigger calling, I think. And I think last year was necessary to open me up to that. And my dad had a really good explanation. He said, Molly, teaching is not your calling, it's your job. He said, your calling is bigger. You can do a lot of different jobs with your calling. So maybe you need to start looking at what your calling is. So I don't think that teaching is my calling. I think that my calling is connecting with people. I think that it's like relationship building. I think instructing is a really good skill of mine. And I think teaching is a really good way to use my calling. So I think that I could see my job changing. It might be being a school counselor. I've thought about going back to school for that. It might be doing something different in education. It might be being a classroom teacher. It might be a librarian. But right now, I'm really happy and I'm really excited for the school year. I'm relieved to say that I made it through that hard time with teaching, and right now I'm still really passionate about this.
Well, good. That's good. And your dad was very wise to say that. That's a great thing.
Yeah.
It's true. It's so true.
Yeah.
Well, I know one thing. Every kid should be so lucky to have a Miss Dugan as a teacher. You're great. So, thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for taking the time. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I will keep watching out for more comments from the high schoolers now instead of 8th graders. Hopefully it's not as...
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
We'll see how that goes.
Happiness Sold Separately is created and hosted by Jason Hensley and is produced by Makash Films. Music by Soundstripe. Narration by Lauren Gobis. If you or someone you know is in crisis and needs immediate help, call the National Mental Health Hotline at 866-903-3787. We would be honored if you would rate, share, and subscribe. From the entire Happiness Sold Separately team, thank you for listening.